Hello and good evening. This is Rose Pozuelo from Curbal.com, and today we're going to talk about how to troubleshoot Google Analytics connector. This is something that you've been asking me throughout my vacation. You're starting to get issues with the Google Analytics connector, and I would like to go through some of them. So what we will talk about is API limits, Google Analytics API limits. I'm sure you've got that email that says that you hit the limit and Power BI cannot refresh your report. So we're going to talk about why that happens and how the Google Analytics connector is set up, so you understand a little bit more of that. We are also going to talk about incremental loading, what that is and why is that a problem for Power BI and connecting to APIs. We will talk about Google Analytics sampling. And then finally, we're going to talk about a way to filter your queries to the API so you reduce some of these problems. So let's start with talking about the API limits and what that is and why it happens. So this is an email that I receive fairly often. It says an error occurred while processing the data in the dataset, and daily limit exceeded, and the quota will be reset, blah, blah. And then you get a link to manage your project. First of all, what is that daily limit? What is that of the limit? Let's go to the Google Analytics documentation and understand what it is. If we go in here, this is the documentation for the Google Analytics API. And here they explain why they have limits. It says that Google Analytics is used by millions of sites, and they put limits or quotas to protect the system from receiving more data than it can handle and to ensure equitable distribution of system resources. What it's basically saying is that we've got 50,000 requests per project per day. And that can be increased by having a paid account that is around $150,000 a year. So that is not something that most of us can actually afford. So we have 50,000 requests per project. What is that project? Well, if we go back to the email that we've got in here, you can see that here is a link to the project. If we click on that, it will take us to the console developers, google.com. Here I have all my Google Analytics or my Google projects, API projects. And here is the one that I have not access to. And the reason for that is because Microsoft has created that project on my behalf. So when I authenticate myself through the Google Analytics connector in Power BI, Microsoft creates a project in the background for me. And we have, for that project, 50,000 requests. Now, I don't know exactly how Microsoft managed these projects and the users. I'm guessing that we are actually sharing projects with other users. Otherwise, for example, my personal websites would never hit that ever. So there has to be a share somewhere. Talking to them, what they say is that if they see that a project reaches a limit, they have a mitigation plan in place to actually increase that quota. How they do that, not very sure. Perhaps they move us to another project. I don't know, actually. But basically, you're hitting the 50,000 requests per project. And there's no way to manage it because Microsoft owns that project. So what can we do? Well, as you can see, you get that email only once in a while. So Microsoft is actively monitoring that and raising our limits or moving us into projects, whatever they are doing. And that will happen, perhaps once in a while. So you don't have to do much about it. There are still some things you can do, and that is to limit the API request you send to Google Analytics to just exactly what you need. So for example, if you're just doing a report on 2016 campaigns, then you don't need to import all data. And this is something that has been requested to Microsoft to add the possibility to add date filters and other filters into the connector. They haven't done it yet, but there is actually a possibility to do it, and I will show you that later on. So if we talk about the incremental loads and what that is, if we go to, this is our growth dashboard. If I click on refresh here, what it does is it goes to Google Analytics API and it brings all the data in. Okay, so instead of saying, okay, I have already loaded up to last week, just give me the last week of data, what Power BI is doing is just loading everything again. It's just asking the API to give all the data again. And that is not efficient at all. And that's what also will cost to hit the API limits. Because instead of ordering 3 rows of data or 100 rows of data, we're ordering 100,000 rows of data for all the data we have stored in Google Analytics. And that makes Power BI sometimes a bit slow with big sites. And well, with big sites, really big sites, it won't work at all. So that is a problem, and that is what is called incremental loading. And there is a request for implementing incremental loading in Power BI. Here's the request, incremental data loads, and please make sure you vote for this idea, because we need to get it implemented in Power BI to be able to manage APIs efficiently and not hit those quotas all the time. And I will post the link so you can just come directly and vote for it if you think it is a good idea. I mean, it's highly requested. I don't know what is the biggest ones nowadays, but it is quite a good functionality to have. And for us in Google Analytics, the only thing they would need is to add the date filter into it, because then we will be able to filter our data properly before actually taking it in. And all of that leads us to sampling. What is sampling? What sampling is when you have a lot of data, like a big website, and this is like fairly big website, what happens is that Google Analytics will not give you all the data. And the reason for that is, again, because they are trying to optimize the resources. So what they give you is sample data. They will get a subset of your data that they think represents the entire set. So if you have like 1 million hits a day, instead of giving you 1 million, they will give you 100,000 that are representative of the million. And they have different algorithms to calculate that. And sampling sometimes is okay, and most of the times it's not. People want to have the entire data. And to be able to do that, I mean, if you have 1 million hits a day, well, you have to have a premium account. But if you're still on the verge that you still can decrease the amount of data that you get to get the entire data set, that's the way to avoid sampling. So I am going to show you now how to apply filters when you're doing your Google Analytics query that hopefully will help with all of these 3 things, okay? So let's go back to our growth dashboard and I'll explain how you can do that. So here we're back into our growth dashboard. We're going to go to Edit Queries. And now you can see that I have a very, very simple query for this dashboard. I have a date and sessions. Now, this dashboard is pulling all the data I have in Google Analytics from July 14th to today's date. And what you can do when you pull in data from other connectors is that you can actually add a data. Say, I would like to have only for this year, or I would like to have only for this month, depending on how your dashboard looks like. And what you would normally do is you would go in here, and then after you download everything, you said, okay, give me for, I don't know, month, this month. Month, this month. And then we get the date for the data for this month only. Now, see one thing, we have here a cube, you see it? And once we did that filter, we get a table. What this means is that Power BI is now working locally. It means that it's using the data that is loaded to do this filtering. If we find a way to actually stay within the cube, then we're still doing that call to the API, to the Google Analytics API. And that means that we're limiting the amount of data we are getting from the API. So as you can see, to do is in current month does not work because it's actually using the dates for the computer. So it's going, losing the API call and going into our computer and checking and working locally. What we can do is actually to use actual dates. So we tell them exactly the date. So let's say that data filters between, and now we give Power BI the actual dates. So we said the 1st of January to today's date. And as you can see, you just made that quote it made that filter within the cube. That means that it's asking Google Analytics for that data. It's not doing it locally. So this is the only data that will get loaded. So this is the only way to prevent sampling. And we could work with that to do incremental loads. I'm not going to do that, but it could actually work. I'm thinking about it out loud. And it will also limit the number of API calls. So this would be the way to limit how much data we're actually asking the Google Analytics API to return. So make sure that you stay within the cube, and to do that you need to actually give actual dates. You see it here. If you ask for bigger than today or something like that, it will have to go to local date, and then it will do that locally instead of asking the Google API for it. So I hope that this explains most of the questions you've been asking me. And just if you still have questions, let me know. I will try to explain it better, or just if you have other questions, just let me know and I'll try to find out. So this is all for today. If you like the video, let me know by liking it. And if you would like others to see it, please share it. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, let me know in the comment box. And subscribe. I publish Power BI videos every week. Have a nice evening. Bye.